Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RotoViz Best Ball Show. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at @OverTimeIreland, and I'm delighted to be joined by Conor O'Driscoll, FFPC Best Ball Champion for 2021, RotoViz.com writer. I've loved having him on the RotoViz Best Ball Show over the last couple of months, I guess, Conor, at this point, but we are going to run it back. We had a 1-2 finish in the FFPC tournament. You came first, we came second. Sean said, if you can't beat them, join them. So Sean has done some drafts with you. I think that I need to draft, and hopefully this can be the team who brings home the big prizes here in the Best Ball Mania tournament over at UnderdogFantasy.com.
Yeah, I'm excited to draft with you. Like you said, 1-2 finish, and hopefully we can make something happen.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And so we are going to spin it up. We like to start these off fast and furious. We do set up. Let us know what spot we've got as the
we got the 103.
103. I've been joking recently. I am on fire with these, 5 and up.
Yeah, and must have rubbed off on me.
Yeah. So how have you been faring for draft luck over the past couple of weeks?
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's all like 107, 108, 109. So I'm absolutely pumped to get.
So I was actually hoping, I was going to mention this to you before. I was like, and Sean's making fun of me because I keep saying that I'm drafting, getting these players at the back end of the 2-3 turn with T. Higgins and AJ Brown and all these drafts. And he's like, that's a rich man's problem to have like too many shares of Jonathan Taylor. And I was nearly tempted to be like, what about a 109? How does that sound? But when these things are going good, you have to keep them going good. So we'll be drafting now. We'll be drafting from that third spot. We'll see how things play out. We may have an option at Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey or elsewhere into that elite wide receiver tier. If you are playing over at UnderdogFantasy.com and you want to get a sign-up bonus, you can use the promo code RotoViz. That will get you a 100% sign-up bonus up to $100 while playing over there. Lots of great contests there. The puppy tree will be starting very shortly, but we are on the clock. And Justin Jefferson goes, Jonathan Taylor goes. Feels like we might have to go with Mr. Christian McCaffrey here.
I mean, this isn't a difficult decision, right? Like some people,
if you've drafted too much Christian McCaffrey at this point, having all these fantastic opening draft slots, it's a difficult decision. But
there's no such thing. I mean, unless you have like 30% Christian McCaffrey, I think we're okay too.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely on board here. I think if you get either of those options at number 3, I think that's fair. I think then if you're drafting probably in the 105, it becomes an interesting option. When you have Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, one of them will generally fall to you at that point. So today it'll be interesting, the 105 spot, to see if they go with Jamar Chase at this point, which they do. So the first 5 picks, as you would expect, but we do get Christian McCaffrey at the third spot, which is really nice and should set us up for that hero or modified 0 RB approach here as we get into the draft. So excited to have a 103. Really looking forward. I think the one thing might catch me out in Underdog is if I get a late draft slot, it'll be like, what players go at these points? Because I'm so used to being like, in round 1, this is my guy, round 2, round 3, round 4, and knowing which way we want to go. So
this is what's going to happen when you finally get the 108. You're like, Stephon Diggs. I normally get Jamar Chase here.
So luckily enough, I have got quite a bit of Stephon Diggs, but in different formats as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I find when you get into the 111 territory where, I like CD Lamb, but it just feels like a little drop down from the top 3 guys there. So yeah, fun start. We get Christian McCaffrey. Really excited to see how it's going to play out. The advantage of this draft is we are not doing it live, so we don't have to really worry, Conor, about. No doubt we are getting sniped, even though nobody's watching this. But how are you feeling about which players we should be adding to the queue here? Who are your favorite targets at the back end of the second round here?
So I like to be very reactive to drafts. I mean, it's not going to happen, but would definitely love if, say, for some strange reason, CeeDee Lamb fell out. DeAndre Swift is somebody who has a realistic chance of falling back to us. That's really cool when it happens. Mike Evans in the second feels terrible. Saquon, Debo, love Debo Samuels at the back end of the second round is a really nice pick. I saw that you guys drafted Mark Andrews recently. And I do think he starts to become a strong pick there at that 2-3 turn. But I also I also love Kyle Pitts.
I was going to joke this as well, but you did add those names to the queues, and I was going to joke, well, we can watch the queue here as those names disappear before it gets back to us at the next pick. There was a draft I did recently with Sean where I think it was like the 102 or 103. I don't know. Let's say we picked Cooper Kupp and Sean added Travis Kelce to the queue, hoping he would get back. And Sean did exactly what you do, is add the players that you're hoping that will come back, just in case you actually missed out on them if they got to that point. But we got a few comments and people really enjoyed seeing, the optimism of adding Kelce to try and get him at the back end.
You never
the second round. He goes at the end of the first round in this. We are ticking through. Mike Evans does go at the 204, so still people willing to take him at that high point. Then DeAndre Swift. So we are 4 picks away. 4 picks in the queue. We have Barkley, Debo, T. Higgins, AJ Brown. Mark Andrews is obviously there, but you mentioned...
Right, yeah, I'll put him in.
You mentioned taking him there, though, but I'm like, it's a case of if we're doing so many of these drafts, you do want to diversify. Sometimes a lot of the teams that we're building at the start had TJ Hawkinson in them. We're trying to diversify that where we can with like the likes of Kittle, Andrews, Pitts, depending on how it plays out. So we are now 3 picks away, probably looking to see if we can get one of the wide receivers here, right, and then when it spins back around, see if another one, ideally 2 of these wide receivers, but if Mark Andrews or Pitts are there in the 3rd round, I think they could be interesting. So we are 2 picks away. We are actually going to have our option here of multiple of these wide receivers. So have you a strong take on Debo versus T. Higgins versus AJ Brown, or is it just a case that go by ADP here with Debo Samuel getting drafted in the back before us?
I would have been dancing if we got him. But I think T. Higgins is a really strong pick here. That would be my preference.
Yeah.
It's like you look at how they performed last year, and if you just switched T. Higgins week 16 and put it into week 17 and did the same for Jamar Chase, like I think we're looking at very different ADPs.
I think it could be interesting. It'll be because of the rookie and 3rd-year situation. It's not like one of them's a veteran either, really, from that perspective, and one's going to surpass the other. But I do think we could see them a little bit closer, but we're always intrigued by that 2nd-year jump. But I do think that there's more in the tank for T. Higgins based on some of the injuries that he has had to deal with as well. That's another key part. He was banged up for quite a majority of the season, although he did play. And I think that, we could be looking at Higgins even higher. So I do know that he is somebody that we're kind of, if I'm at the back end of that 1st round and it wraps around, I would be tempted to take Higgins early in the 2nd round. So to get him there, he is one of the guys that I'm drafting a huge amount of. AJ Brown is the other. I have a lot of AJ Brown Higgins teams together. I don't know if that's something that we should be continuing to hammer on, or if we should start our differentiations, because, either those teams all do gloriously well or some of them start to sink. We do have the option here of Mark Andrews, who's well below ADP, and we also had the option of AJ Brown. I have a lot of the AJ Brown, T. Higgins, so we do go with Mark Andrews there. You mentioned that you do like him at that point. I was interested potentially at the back end of the 2nd round, but to get him in the 3-3 there, and then Kyle Pitts goes 2 picks after, I think you have to take a value like that when it comes up.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about Best Ball Mania, this huge tournament. You're trying to find ways where you differentiate versus the field without giving up a terrible amount of points. And I don't think that there will be many CMC, T. Higgins, Mark Andrews starts. And so that have to feel very good about that.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I know it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I do think if those teams have McCaffrey, then Andrews and Higgins, I think it would be done in that order of Higgins in the 3rd round, Andrews in the 2nd round. I think it could be unique, though, because it's from the 103, so the players that then we pair from here on out could be what makes it extremely unique based on how we have started off here. But it also gives us a start where we have an elite running back, an elite wide receiver entering his 3rd year, and somebody who has come off an absolutely elite tight end season. So we could potentially have the best player at each position come the end of the season. They could potentially be the number 1 at those positions. So I think we're off to a really strong start here. It is balanced. The other thing is we're usually looking to get that elite tight end. And sometimes you're having to pay up for that, but then if you're waiting a little bit longer, and you know, I like to wait for Hawkinson, but if you miss on Hawkinson, then you're into quite a dicey territory.
Right.
So it also sets us up for a 2 tight end build depending on how it goes later, and it also means that potentially now if one of those quarterbacks is a value when it comes to the Hawkinson range, for example, or we get a flat zone at wide receiver, it gives us the option to pivot to one of these top tier quarterbacks as well. So we're into a nice zone here as we start off. But yeah, I was tempted by that at the number, you know, the two pick. So to get him at the 3 was nice. So we're looking here now at being 4 picks away. There is some very intriguing options here in Breece Hall. Gabriel Davis is there. Then we have Deontay Johnson. He would be another option. And then there is some of the quarterbacks. I think, you know, you could pair him with Lamar here, but I think I would be passing at this next pick anyway. How are you feeling overall with who we should be targeting here at this particular spot as Breece Hall does go off the board?
This is a tricky spot, I think. Like you're looking at the 3 players at the top of the queue, I think are the exception of Cam Akers. I think Zeke and Gabriel Davis are kind of overvalued here. They took Lamar Jackson on us.
I think I was going to pass at this point. I know we are on the clock and we will have a bit of pressure, but we have Deontay Johnson in the queue. I would be intrigued here with Gabriel Davis based on the fact that we have T. Higgins, and you could potentially stack up that Week 17 game if we did go for.
I'll do it if you want, but I don't think like.
Let's go Deontay. Then we'll go Deontay. We'll stick with it. I'm happy to let you take the lead on this one. And this is a case where I am drafting, you know, Deontay a lot. So it's just a case of the tiebreaker there for me may have been to go to Davis. Yeah. So again, I think Davis is probably at the peak of his price here, but who knows? We are 4 picks away. If things break perfectly for us here, Gabriel Davis would be nice. The other player that I'm drafting a huge amount of is DK Metcalf. He obviously got a massive contract extension. I've been drafting him before that. You know, people were asking me what's the upside on Metcalf. Still very young, entering, you know, he's had double-digit touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Our touchdowns fluky. I think when you're doing double digits that you're probably pretty consistent at that point. We do miss out on Gabriel Davis.
Mahomes here at QB4 in the 5th round.
Well, I would go with DK Metcalf, but it's up to you.
I just think we're talking about one of our shows is going to be about the new QB window.
Oh, and teaser alert.
Yeah.
So let us know. Let us have a little tease in there. Why we take Patrick Mahomes there.
Well, I mean, it used to be that you could draft, for example, Cam Newton like a pick 90 or something like that, and now all the tools we have, all the information say, hey, you gotta pay for quarterback points. Like the drafters are efficient at knowing the order of how these guys are going to score, and when you pay a little bit more, you get a lot more in terms of points. And I think I look at Patrick Mahomes. I've seen drafts last year, drafts where he was going in the 2nd round, and now to get him in the 5th round, it feels too strong to pass up. Like I'm drafting DK Metcalf. I like DK Metcalf, but as compared to like a real life player in Mahomes, like I don't think it's the same caliber, I should say.
No, that's fair enough. And I've obviously read the piece up on the website, and something again we continue to talk about is drafters getting smarter, people figuring out where the sweet spots are to draft these players, and using the win the flex tool, you know, when it gets to a certain point. And we'll save this for the exact article, but like we talked about the dead zone evolving, that quarterback window we talk about a lot has also evolved, particularly at the FFPC. It's a little bit more condensed. So again, like we took Mark Andrews, this gives us the flexibility. I did mention having taken Andrews where we did, it give us the option to pivot to a quarterback at some point, and that was slightly below ADP. So I think it's a nice play there. Actually, directly at ADP now that I mentioned that, I see it on the screen.
Right.
Who are some of the targets 8 picks away that you want to get? And we will get into DK Metcalf another time. I was going to give my little spiel on why I'm drafting him, but let's focus on where we're going after this. We'll save that for another show, another teaser.
Well, we talked about the dead zone, and a lot of these backs are kind of the prototypical dead zone backs that we actually do want to avoid.
My goal when we get to this point is that the next 4 picks are those 4 guys. That is usually what my goal is, to see what will come along to us. But interesting, the 2 wide receivers that are there in Amari Cooper and Thielen, they are both for me kind of, in a wide receiver dead zone that I'm not looking to target. And it's not a dead zone of wide receivers, but they for me are not really on my list.
Clear avoids.
Yeah, we will be in some of our upcoming shows in RotoViz Overtime talking about the must avoid list or the must target list. And for me, both of those guys are veterans who are past their peak. We currently have 2 wide receivers. This is a range where me and Sean have discussed recently a little bit about the likes of DeAndre Hopkins, but I think you do need that little bit more wide receiver depth to be adding him in at this particular point. You do get into the young wide receiver kind of area here as well. Who are some of your favorite targets? And I do think we may have to dig a little bit deeper down here, because 4 picks away, I think some of these wide receivers might come off the board on us as well.
Yeah, hopefully Amari and Thielen give us some cover, given that they're starting to that they're
Thielen goes off the board. Yeah,
thank God for that.
This is the zone when I was talking. I think it makes sense to take Mahomes there. My thought process at the point with Mahomes was, if Joe Burrow comes around here, would be a perfect spot for us. We're 1 pick away.
You could have said that when we were drafting.
Oh, well, you have control. You have access to the controls. Scroll down a tiny bit. We have Drake London at the top of our queue. It feels to me like this is a quarterback zone. I don't know if you want to do it, but I wouldn't be against taking Burrow here and just having 2 absolutely elite ones and pairing him with T. Higgins.
Only got 2 wide receivers through 6 rounds. That's it.
Let's do it for some fun. Let's go.
All right, we're gonna have to battle against.
We'll make it work. Don't worry. We're done at quarterback now. That is not something I've done in any draft this year, to take them as close together as that. But we will see how it plays out. I think we did get some values with our tight end earlier, for example, in Andrews, and I think we can try and see how we play out here. We definitely, the one thing we can say is we got 2 quarterbacks in the window. That's for sure.
We definitely got them in the window.
A very expensive window area of it. But I do feel like this is a flat area of the draft where I usually dip into the Trey Lance, Joe Burrow quarterback zone. The other way I'm usually playing it here is if we haven't got our tight end. This is kind of the Schultz-Hawkinson area. So I think this will work out. I think there's a lot of ways.
Well, we're about to be on the clock. All the good wide receivers are gone.
We take Trey Lance and get a third. I scroll down just a little bit and show us the wide receiver position.
I mean, maybe we can reach on Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, that was what I was going to call as the player here.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. But
the other player,
we've hit an avalanche, and we're just trying to stay on our skis now.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. I'm happy. Some of the players that go in this range, I'm happy to take that little bit of reach. On the other player I'd be happy to kind of take there would have been Kadarius Toney, but I do think Ayuk makes sense. We will see if it makes it around. We'll start to get into that Chiefs wide receiver zone. Is there any of the Chiefs wide receivers that you prefer over others in that range?
Honestly, it's kind of whoever makes it for me. I suppose we've really got a choice between MVS and Sky Moore here. When it comes to those guys, it's kind of like it's a little bit even. Whereas MVS, you know what you're getting. He's going to be a good deep threat, but at the same time, he's played so many years and he hasn't shown that he's like a superstar. So you're probably not getting a superstar. Whereas Sky Moore, it's going to take him a little bit longer, probably, to come along. But he could just be the stud. Hopefully we get our choice. Maybe we get both of them. Hopefully we get one of them.
We'll see how it plays out. But no, I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a bit of a unique build as to how we do it. And I think gives us access to some upside so far. But you mentioned at the moment 3 wide receivers on this roster. Let's take a rundown through the rosters. We're 11 picks away. We have T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk. We also have Mark Andrews at tight end. Then we have Christian McCaffrey at running back. We have Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So it is going to take a little bit of maneuvering here to make this work out. But I think that we can we can do it. The other player, in case he does manage to get back to us, I would add Kadarius Toney, who I mentioned a moment ago, to the queue. We start to then. The tricky part now for us is we are potentially going to have to bypass some of those 0 RB targets we have for wide receivers, but I think we can play it out here. What's your confidence level of making this team work based on how we have gone so far?
What's my confidence level? I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna say we're gonna pull it off. We're gonna stick the landing. We got a little bit unlucky with these teams loading up on wide receiver, but hopefully they hold off now. There's not a lot of badges in this draft, so hopefully they start the feast on some running backs here.
The other thing I would like to see people feast on is quarterbacks. At the minute, by ADP in the queue, we have Russell, or not in the queue, but by ADP, we have Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott. Would like to see some of those potentially start to go off. We have 2 quarterbacks, but we can have 2 of the majority of the quarterbacks off the board. So a couple of teams coming up here before our pick with no quarterback, you'd be hoping that they might dip into that quarterback room. Checking through the rest of the queue, if you can scroll down a bit, and we'll see what our other options are. We could potentially, I know we're leaving ourselves short at wide receiver, but we're going to make this pretty unique. I think we should add Penny to the queue, who you were hovering over there. I'm always going to have Singletary in the queue at some point, but tight end wise, if you want to look in.
Oh, Hawkinson is gone, so.
Yeah, I think we're at the moment now at this point, I'm waiting quite a bit for those next tight ends. The tight ends have gone off the board pretty solidly, but if Hawkinson had got back there, which is quite late, going at the 8:03, that would have been very, very interesting at that point.
I think at this point we're hoping. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say there's some of our. I think we still have a lot of nice targets here in the back end of the draft, and it's going to be fun. You can add Singletary to the queue there as well when we're doing that. He can be a bring back for the Joe Burrow led Bengals.
He's gone.
And my heart has crumbled at the 8:08. But we are back on the clock. I think we go with one of the Chiefs.
I think we go with MVS and then hope that Sky Moore makes it to ADP.
Yep. I think that's the way to go. I haven't drafted a huge amount of MVS, and being a Packers fan, I've seen what he can do in terms of big plays and deep balls and things like that. But I do feel it is a little bit of a high price. But when we can get him at around ADP, 3 picks after, and we can pair him up with Mahomes. I haven't drafted Patrick Mahomes a huge amount, so I haven't done many Chiefs stacks, so this feels like an opportunity to do that. If it is a case that Sky Moore does come back to us here, is he the clear pick for you? Because again, that will be exactly at ADP, or is there somebody else?
Yeah. I think we've taken Mahomes, and we're a little bit short-handed at wide receiver, and so our best bet for this to be a really good team is that the Chiefs have this gangbusters passing attack that they have in previous years.
We get him. He does make it back, so that worked out well for us.
Yeah, I think that's actually worked out pretty well. We've met the rule where you have 5 wide receivers before 10 rounds. We've got our correlation. We've double stacked Mahomes. We've stacked Joe Burrow. I know that's not normally. I know when you draft Rashawn, that's not normally a priority, and sometimes my stacks aren't that big either, but I do think that's a nice kind of like boost to this team.
Yeah, I think when you can make it work at the ADP, that's the thing I keep talking about, is not reaching an ADP. Right. And we talked about Davis as a potential pick earlier. I think part of the reason that his ADP is quite as high as it is on Underdog is the stacking element that people are trying to target for week 17. So that is something that's one of the reasons I haven't drafted him as much as I would have liked to, is based on I think his ADP is a little bit too high. So we have some correlations built in through those opening 9 rounds, and I think we can fill it out. I think getting the 2 Chiefs there really starts to balance out the overall build, and we'll see how we play out from this point forward. Currently, we are at a 2 quarterback, 1 running back, 5 wide receivers, if I can get that out, and then 1 tight end. So if I had said to you, we wouldn't have 2 quarterbacks in the build at this point, but this would be the point now where we're talking about the window and trying to make sure we have a second quarterback in. But when we talk about your article in an upcoming show, the window has moved. So maybe this will work out still for us based on how it all played out here in this particular draft. So we are now 11 picks away. In the queue is Kareem Hunt, Kenneth Walker, Tyler Lockett, Tyler Boyd, and Garrett Wilson. You're not going to have to convince me into drafting Boyd or Wilson. Probably not Lockett either if he lasts to us, which would be at that point 18 picks after ADP. I think we would have to go and take him. But
I mean,
he's not somebody I've drafted very much based on, I've mentioned him. I'm drafting more Metcalf.
Yeah, I'm probably doing the optimism thing where I hope that all the values just fall to us, that we look out with picks. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes you do get a nice value, and
sometimes miracles happen. But we do have a few options here in the queue. I think one of them I'm hoping should at least get to us at that particular point. As I mentioned, that the first one goes off the board and Kareem Hunt. Mike Gesicki goes off the board. There is going to be Ronald Jones, slide him in. This is the area too, if I don't have that second quarterback. My usual final spot for a second quarterback in the build without trying to go for a third quarterback is usually Justin Fields. Tends to go in this particular range. Tyler Lockett, who we mentioned, does go off the board. We are going to have some options here. Any of the tight ends that go in this range interest you? Isaiah Spiller is there as well. I think we can add him into the queue as a potential option.
So Tyler Boyd goes.
That was the one I wanted, but
Aaron Rodgers goes. So we're gonna have our pick of these guys. I think we're better off holding off on tight ends.
Yep. I agree. Gesicki would have been a target for me, but as I mentioned, he did also go a couple of picks ago. I do think that Walker becomes very, very interesting here. We're at 118 as our pick. His ADP is 107. He does last through as Patterson and Kirk Cousins go off the board. How do you feel about taking Walker here and seeing how it comes back?
Yeah. I think that's strong. We're getting more value, and we've passed on running back for quite a while. So getting our RB2 here feels strong. Gonna draft them. And I think I've written in a previous article about, and I don't know if we talked about, we did do a show about this, where when you do an anchor, most drafters are too uncomfortable about waiting on that RB2. And so come on, Ronald Jones. When you can delay into that zone where you're still feeling very happy, comfortable, we feel comfortable with Kenneth Walker at RB2, but other drafters are not. It becomes a very unique build.
You have Ronald Jones as the next option here. He was somebody we were thinking about. Anyone else just in the full queue that would be interesting to us at this point? Tim Patrick's there, Christian Watson. I don't think so. I think it's the clear pick, Ronald Jones here. Yeah. It would be interesting if we haven't borrowed, that would be the range there. Justin Fields could have been our pick. But that there sets us up now with Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, and Ronald Jones. And we have really stacked up here on KC, but we're attacking. We're going to get those KC points no matter what happens, unless everything just goes through Kelsey. But that's probably what will happen with the way we've set this roster up. But how are you feeling now as we have a 2 quarterback, 3 running back, 5 wide receiver, 1 tight end? That's kind of where we would usually approach being in the 11th, 12th round range.
I'm definitely feeling a lot better about this team than when we had just 2 wide receivers. I think we've got strength all over the roster. We've got the elite tight end. We've got T Higgins. We're making a YR1 bet for T Higgins. Deontay Johnson is a strong pick. I know Brandon Ayuk. He was in the doghouse last year. And some of the training camp news has actually been, he's actually one of the biggest leaders on our team now.
He seems to have really figured it out according to reports. It's always hard to know, but
it is.
What I would say so far with Kyle Shanahan this offseason, he doesn't seem to be mixing his words or trying to hide anything when it comes to the quarterback situation. I think he was very, very aggressive last year when things weren't working out for Ayuk. And I think he's probably been pretty honest at this point maybe with a little bit of sugar coating on top of it for what he's doing. I remember one of the podcasts last year on the big breakout week for Ayuk. I had titled it "From the Doghouse to the Penthouse" because I had drafted a lot of Ayuk last year, and it didn't really work out early in the season. But fantastic talent, still very young. So I think smart play there. When we look now, we are 10 picks away. We're getting into some of our favorite zero RB candidates here with some young wide receivers going in this range. I'm interested in probably putting Jameson Williams in there, Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis Landry's ADP is starting to get to a point where I'm becoming a little bit less interested. And then the news has been more positive than I expected on Michael Thomas. So that I think affects what we can think of Landry. But based on the build we have, we'll still be looking for some of those wide receiver options depending on how the value falls. Albert O and Gerald Everett, yep, you add them into the queue. And I think we're into a zone where there's a lot of options for us here. We can kind of pivot depending on value, and we have all the options open for us at the positions. It'd be nice if we did get Everett around ADP. That would give us a 2 tight end build, which would then give us a lot of flexibility into those final rounds for running back and wide receiver.
Yeah, I feel comfortable passing that second tight end into the 13th round just because we have 2 targets we like, 4 picks between our picks, so we can pray that we don't get sniped.
And interesting here in terms of the players in the queue, Madison is there, who leads the way by ADP, then Henderson, then Carter, then Algier. I think if you don't take Breece Hall, Carter becomes very interesting. Interesting enough, before we recorded this, I've edited a draft from Stealing Bananas with Sean Siegel and Ben Gretsch. He talked in that about Madison not being somebody he thinks can have a standalone role this year. And then he also talked about Henderson and Carter being very interesting options. So they're the guys that I'm most interested in as well. Do you have a strong preference for Madison and he goes, which I was hoping would happen?
He's gone. you didn't want to have to argue with me about him. I'm not drafting a ton of Madison. But I anytime players fall well beyond ADP, I'm interested.
Henderson just went. He was somebody I was intrigued by. Carter, I think, becomes very interesting here. It's right at ADP. The other players that are right at ADP are just slightly after it. Are Jarvis Landry, are Jameson Williams. I've been drafting Jameson Williams when the opportunity presents itself at ADP. How do you feel about the guys that are here?
So we've got a choice between Michael Carter and Jameson Williams.
I think it's up to you. If you feel strongly one way or the other, if you feel strongly one way or the other, we'll take him. But by ADP, there is that edge towards Williams.
Yeah, I think I lean Williams just based on the fact that wide receiver just does dry up so fast, and
the dream here for me would be
tournament. Yeah, with the huge top heavy nature, all the teams you have to beat in weeks 15, 16, and 17. He could be a prime producer that you get in the 12th round.
I'm going to throw a name out here in case he does get to us that could be interesting, would be Jameson Crowder. The reports haven't been great so far for him, but it would fit in with the Bengals side of things that we have set up for week 17. But again, it's an interesting area here of the draft where there's a lot of options for us.
So
it feels like we miss both tight ends if we don't go here and take one. And then when we're looking at who we're taking, obviously the reports on Dulcich have been very positive for the Broncos. I still feel like Alberto at this point is the extreme value out of the two of them. I'm drafting a lot of Everett, but I'm
okay. I'm happy with that.
Okay, and the part also is, and I'm not going to say if you want to go Carter here because we did skip on him, we could take the risk.
Yeah. We obviously very very hard not to be tempted by Carter there. And I guess we could have made the argument of like, hey, Hunter Henry, Everett, maybe even Njoku, Higbee, and Fant. But this is kind of a range where where if you get your tight end 2 there, it's very valuable. The tight ends here do seem like great values, and hopefully we get some tight end play and some flex play from Alberto there.
So he went as tight end 15 in this particular draft. Everett then is tight end 17 by tight end ADP. But I just feel like he should be still going in that tight end 10 to tight end 12 range, and I'm still trying to target him in that area. Ideally, if we can get an elite tight end, pair him with that. The other ones then I'm holding off on is Everett and Fant. They are my other priority targets at tight end to try and get a 2 tight end build. But yeah, I feel like it's sliding a little bit much, because I still think that even if it's not a case that he is the leading guy the entire season, if Dulcich comes in and is amazing, I still think we've seen the upside of Alberto in this offense, how athletic he is, and that's what you want from tight ends, breaking those big plays and seeing what we can get out of it. So we'll see how it plays out. Crowder still there. We are 10 picks away. Let's fill up that queue with some interesting options. I think Terry and Davis Price I would be adding in there, Kenneth Gainwell. They're kind of the options in this range for us. At wide receiver then, we did take Jameson Williams, so DJ Chark is there as an option, but it depends how much you want to go in and get him. I like Chark. I think as well with the Chark. With Chark, for example, I think Jameson Williams might take a little bit of time to come on in the season. My thought process with him is that he can be that rookie who emerges as a late season superstar for your roster, and it might be a case where while he's developing along the way that we would see DJ Chark being the guy that's getting those points. So we'll see now how these plays pick out over the next 9 picks. I would guess that Connor, all these guys could be gone by the time we pick, but is there any other guys further down the list that you're interested in?
We're not going to be loving the players available. I have a sneaky suspicion, Colin, that the best player available is going to be tight ends. That's not my suspicion.
Your suspicion could be proven very much correct here in the next couple of minutes. So down to 6 picks away, still 3 players available. So things looking maybe a little bit more positive at this particular point. But Everett's one of the players that's in there. We're likely to pass on him because we've got the second tight end as it is, but wouldn't be against it. But I think we need to target other areas. Crowder would be nice to see in there. Any other running backs in this range that are high targets for you at this particular point?
Not really. I would consider Khalil Herbert, given how much he showed last year, and that not drafting David Montgomery, but it's kind of like the backup tight end on like an offense that we don't really expect to be explosive or good. So
unless you're like me, who's drafting too many, Detroit versus Chicago week 17 matchups.
So
one pick away. I think okay, we're on the clock. I know I said to wait, but at this particular point, we are. What are we? 17 picks after ADP for Crowder. I think we.
Yeah. Obviously, he's dropping here because of the news.
Yeah.
But he's still when he's played well. You hope that he can come back to training camp healthy and unseat McKenzie, who didn't get paid. They just gave him a contract and he didn't get paid a lot of money. So it's not like they are in love, enamored with McKenzie.
I do think too, like obviously we're a couple of days into training camp while we're recording this one. Sometimes we can jump into that news too quickly and
right.
Get ahead of ourselves, but just we're on the clock. Herbert is the top option here for us, but anyone else of high intrigue here? We could reach on Wendell would probably be an option, but Herbert probably fits here for us.
Yeah, I think it's Herbert. Get a round of ADP value.
We get that Herbert versus Jameson Williams stack as well for week 17.
Yeah. He's going to be laughing when they're the ones scoring all the points.
Everyone's talking about obviously Cincinnati, which we have done here, Cincinnati and the Bills, but I just can't get enough of the Jets and the Seahawks and the Bears and the Lions. They're my go-to week 17 cheap stacks that I'm building up.
So, Colm, I obviously listen to Overtime Ireland a lot. I listen to your drafts. And I hear you put in the comments about, oh, Sean, he's a master at waiting for these picks for the last second, and then he just picks who he wants. I think I think you must be relishing my my openness to agree to what you say.
It feels good, but the other thing, there has been a few picks where I'm like, well, you have the button, so there's not a huge amount I can do in this situation. But the one
No,
thing
you're
I
still
have
in
noticed
Ireland.
is
You're still
you
the
have,
top underdog.
yeah,
So I think you got to take what you can get, right?
that's what you have to do. I've noticed that you actually are expanding the names of the players to click draft. That's Sean doesn't go to that effort when we're doing the drafts. He just put it to the top of the queue and let it tick down. So it's a different experience, but a fun experience. Drafting for people who draft, when you are streaming a draft or recording a draft, trying to get back and forth and make it entertaining for people to talk about players and to balance it all out. It definitely is a challenge. I would recommend somebody like when they're doing their draft or co-managing a team, trying to make that conversation happen and then fit in, because there's a couple of times even in this draft where I've been like, yep, we're back on the clock and I have not finished that part of the conversation we were going to have. So it does happen pretty quick, but really fun. And the one thing I'll say, Connor, I don't know if you would feel the same way, is when you then go and you draft solo, it feels like you have so much time to make the picks. The clarity is amazing when you're solo drafting after it.
Yeah, I haven't done too many drafts on stream. I think I just did one in the not the pre-draft kind of slate, and found it very, very difficult. Very difficult. But I was also doing it on my phone while streaming on the laptop, so that made it harder. But no, this is a fun draft.
We are 10 picks away, so let's do a quick run through. With Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Ronald Jones, Khalil Herbert. Then we have T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, pair of Chiefs wide receivers in MVS and Sky Moore. Then Jameson. We got both of the Jameson. We have Jameson Williams and Jameson Crowder. Very Irish of us to get the two Jamesons in there. And then Mark Andrews and Alberto.
Yeah, I think it's fun. We've kind of built out our stacks. We've kind of triple stacked Patrick Mahomes with adding on Ronald Jones. I know the correlation isn't quite as good there, but there is some. We've got our Joe Burrow, the T. Higgins, and then the Jameson Crowder bring back, which is fun. We also
one thing I'm wondering. I'm just after
Deontay Johnson and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, it wasn't really intentional when we made that selection, but we also have the Chiefs with Alberto as well for the bring back.
Oh yeah, true.
So that was not by design, but it's worked out pretty well there.
So how many? We've got 7 wide receivers, 4 running backs. So to me, we really need 2 more running backs and another wide receiver. Are we still willing to draft William Fuller?
We're willing to draft him, depending on who else is available. My thing has always been with the split on him and Julio has been to draft Julio. Myself and Sean have discussed this a few times, but I think still the upside of potentially taking Fuller here if he signs. I'm just not sure if he actually does come back. There's been a lot of different reports about, could go to the Browns and things like that, but it's intriguing. Apparently the Packers offered him a deal and he wasn't very interested in playing in the cold, so we'll see how it plays out. We are back on the clock. Some wide receivers here that I wouldn't mind going and getting, but probably will come back to us on the next pick. We don't have a huge amount of wide receiver options. Wendell, who's somebody I like to target here, has gone off the board. So I do think that Will Fuller, based on our options available and the build, probably does make sense here, because there is a couple of options at running back at the top of the queue. Darrell Williams is there, J.D. McKissick, Raheem Mostert, and then we have Brian Robinson. Mostert could be interesting if it comes back, but I do think that there's a couple of other options that might fit our build. Somebody who actually went off the board 2 picks before, who was going to be my prime target there, was Chris Evans. He would have fitted in with our Cincinnati kind of lineup as well. So he did go, so we don't get him.
I think we're looking at running back now.
Yeah, and I think I've been drafting a lot of Sony Michel, but I also think Mostert could be interesting. They're going quite close now in ADP. Have you a preference out of those 2 guys? Usually I've been going Sony.
Not really. It's one of those ambiguous backfields.
The other option we have here, if you want, is to go for somebody like a Brian Robinson. and then wait and see which Miami Dolphins running back might get back to us in the last round here.
I've no problem with that.
Zachary Kruger will be pleased with our draft as well if we.
We got to get the Zachary Kruger stamp of approval on this.
Maybe that he sees that I've drafted Brian Robinson here, he will allow me to draft Devin Singletary in an upcoming draft, which he hasn't let me do for quite some time. But I think that we see if Sony or Raheem gets back. I like both of those guys, but I'm usually going for Sony Michel. The Ernest Johnson, I would slide in there, yeah, too. And for you at the moment, the build, we have 1 pick remaining. The build is 2 quarterback, 5 running back, 8 wide receiver, 2 tight ends. I do think that the final pick here, it probably makes sense to make it a 6 running back build.
Right. Well, we passed on RB2 for so long. That it just makes sense to just add an additional one over the standard kind of like anchor RB taking 5.
Yeah, the other player I would add in, we are going to have a lot of options here. We're probably going to that when I mentioned this earlier in the show is sometimes when we get to this point, we're looking at like there's some great 0 RB candidates here at the back end of the draft. The other guy that was there was Hassan Haskins. I think could be interesting. When we're looking at running backs, we're often looking at the ADP and the big gaps in ADP, for example. And we have a situation I talked earlier about Michael Carter and Breece Hall. Much smaller gap than we have, obviously, with Derrick Henry and Hassan Haskins. But when we're looking at potentially, unfortunately, injuries do happen. If that happens, all of a sudden, Hassan Haskins could be into a much better position. So I think he's interesting.
My fear with Haskins is that Derrick Henry is the star. He's the guy that they're willing to give the rock to. Whereas when he gets injured, plan B may not be, oh, well, here's the RB2 in the roster. We're just going to give him every touch.
Let's get Adrian Peterson back.
What's that?
Let's get Adrian Peterson back. That's what they did last year, wasn't it?
Exactly.
And then they went to Devontae Foreman after that. But I do think that standalone role is not something that I expect him to have. Whereas I do expect the likes of Brian Robinson, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert all to have standalone roles. The one concern I would have with the Miami backfield is I think it's going to be so split. I think we're going to see pretty much a 49ers light backfield there with how they scheme things. But I also think that Michelle probably has the 3-down upside of the running backs in that backfield. That was a very Irish saying, Connor. I think it's that
the boys.
Yeah, we've been spending too much time talking here on this show. I've started to show my natural flavor of language. But then in terms of, I think that makes it interesting. The other player that goes in this kind of range is Trey Sermon, who last year, for people to remember, was coming in with a lot of hype, a lot of steam at this stage of the year. So always interested in those guys, post-hype potentials, but feels like he may have missed that opportunity. But it's always intriguing as well.
You can throw him in.
I don't think we'll draft him, but we can throw him in anyway. The other thing looking at can you just scroll down to the running backs? We see the bye weeks that we have for our running backs so far.
Bye weeks don't matter.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I would say, like at the moment, it's not week 14, but we have 2 week 14 running backs. I wouldn't really want a third week 14 back, but none of these bye weeks are week 14. But as Connor says, bye weeks don't matter. So we can see. I'm always that little bit more in a 0 RB or a hero RB build to just check, let's say now we're looking at this, things don't play out. Khalil Herbert goes on IR, just pretend Ronald Jones doesn't work out for the Chiefs. Then you're into a situation where you don't want to have too much crossover for that then bye weeks. You want to try and keep options available. But
if all our running backs get injured, I think we might be in trouble. All right.
Do you think so? that can happen. If you have start off with very few running backs and then they all get injured, you really do struggle. We're 1 pick away. We have pretty much all of the guys we had in the queue, but Raheem Mostert lasts to, oh my goodness, what are we at here? 30 picks after ADP. I haven't drafted much Raheem Mostert, but I think we probably have to take a go.
I think we're being begged. The draft room is begging us to take Raheem Mostert.
That is, that's amazing. Is cleared to, as of 4 days ago, it pops up, is cleared to return. But Sony Michel went at the 209, which was after ADP. Mostert goes then at that particular point much, much later, which Yeah, haven't drafted him, but that's when the ADP becomes your friend. Let's have a look through the final roster. Connor, give us a run through the final standings there.
So yeah, we started Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, very pleased with that. We got T. Higgins, and then Mark Andrews fell to us at a huge value, giving us elite tight end locked up. Deontay Johnson feels like, especially compared to the way wide receiver has been going, Deontay Johnson, given his ability to earn targets, does feel like a nice pick there. We double tap quarterback in the 5th and 6th round. I think that definitely makes us unique, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of drafters comfortable using that approach.
And as well, it's not something that would be intending to do, but in certain situations, I think sometimes pivoting to the non-standard of what we are doing gives you that differentiation. And we talked about the quarterback window, and we are going to talk about it more in an upcoming episode. It has moved up. If we look at the other quarterbacks, we took those two guys. The only quarterback that went after or in that range, Justin Herbert went 1 pick before we took Patrick Mahomes. Then Kyler Murray goes off a couple of picks later. Then Hurts. Then it comes back to Joe Burrow, who we take. So after the Joe Burrow pick, there's a drop to the Trey Lance, Matthew Stafford. Then you get Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady. I feel like that worked out for us the way that things split up. The one way we could probably have done it a little bit differently is we take Joe Burrow there. We take Brandon Ayuk then after that. I don't think there's a huge amount of ways I would have changed that around. Looking at the draft board and the 2v2s, is there something that you would have done different there? We take Brandon Ayuk. I'm not interested in Amari Cooper. I'm not interested in Christian Kirk. I'm interested in Chris Olave and Drake London, but I'm also in the 2v2 happy to get Joe Burrow and Ayuk. The players that went before Burrow were DeAndre Hopkins, Alan Lazard, Elijah Moore, who I would have took there, and then Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson after him. So looking back,
there's a slight possibility maybe we could have gotten Drake London and then Joe Burrow.
The pick the way I would change it if I was going to switch it in hindsight would be to take Bateman over Mahomes and then take Burrow. But I think it worked out the way it has worked out.
Yeah. I mean, that would have only made like a one wide receiver difference.
Exactly. It doesn't really change things. Like Brandon Ayuk versus Bateman, the range of outcomes are probably not all that different.
Right. And Mahomes obviously gives us a nice correlation boost to be able to take these kind of like cheats wide receivers and just hope that we get some strong performances there.
Yeah, exactly. So when we do that double quarterback, it wasn't looking all that appetizing, but I think the way it played out after that, being able to add Sky Moore, then add Kenneth Walker, Ronald Jones, Jameson Williams to get some rookie upside there, Albert O. Not intentional, but we can say now that it was intentional to that Denver versus Chiefs game week 17. Then Crowder linked in for a big drop in ADP, but also links in if things do turn around for him for that Cincinnati stack as well. And then we take Khalil Herbert in the 15th. How did we finish out those last couple of rounds, Connor?
So then we took Will Fuller. Obviously, the news on him has been a tumbleweed, but
the news has been there is no news.
Yeah, there's no news. He could be in remote, I don't know, Alaska or
Barbados or something like that.
Maybe he was abducted by aliens, and
let's not get into conspiracy theories. That's a different podcast.
But then we finished it up with some late round running back, 0 running back targets. Brian Robinson. That feels strong. They're getting him there, especially with the news that Antonio Gibson hasn't been practicing. And then Raheem Mostert cleared to return when he is healthy, one of the fastest players in the NFL. Obviously, he's got the connection with the head coach, Mike McDaniels. So it definitely seems like we got a strong roster overall. We correlated at or below ADP. I think maybe the people will be disappointed that it's a RotoViz draft, and they'll be disappointed in our wide receivers. But
it's the first time for everything. At least we have Christian McCaffrey. But when we look through that roster, I think we've done a lot of things very, very well. An interesting build, quite unique. The other thing is, like, and people listening are probably like, they probably heard me drafting Sony Michel a lot of different times, myself and Sean talking about them. But a lot of it is an ADP game. And Sean often talks about, we don't know everything. We probably are going to be wrong on more things than we're right on. And that's why, like, rather than having 100% Sony Michel, if the draft falls in a way that Raheem Mostert is there, you want to have him on those rosters as well, and have multiple shots at the same offense. Because I do think Miami's going to score a lot of touchdowns this year. I think they're going to be much improved with Tyreek Hill there, with Waddle taking a step forward in the second year. Tua should take a step forward. I think it's going to be interesting and trying to get access to different offenses. And when you're in the 18th and 19th round, like, most of them picks when we come to the end of the season aren't going to hit, unless it's Sony Michel from last year, who turned out to win Connor the best ball tournament over me and Sean and Blair.
Yeah.
So, So interesting this year. We didn't get Sony there. That maybe Mostert is the guy this year, the late round guy.
Yeah. Obviously, you get an 18th round pick that can score a lot of points. You are in business, and we hope that that's Raheem Mostert.
We'll see how it plays out, but fun draft over at Underdog Fantasy in the Best Ball Mania 3. If you aren't already following Connor on Twitter, make sure you do so. It's at Drico Out. The information for that will be in today's show notes, as always, and you can follow me if you wish at Overtime Ireland on Twitter. The RotoViz Best Ball show is available in audio podcast form as well. You can check that out on its own podcast feed. That is the RotoViz Best Ball show. Hit that subscribe button